like I'm floating through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done. Oh,
what's going on, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see behind me, we got something just a little bit different back there today. We're going to be working on a 2021 Ford Bronco Badlands. This is a buddy of mine. He picked up the Zone 3.5-inch lift and leveling kit, and then he also has some rough country steps he wanted me to put on it. So we're going to get to work on that. This is something I've never done, so to actually give you a step-by-step process, it will not be. Hold on just a minute, my TV decided to start playing some crap. Alright, with that taken care of, anyway, this by no means is going to be a step-by-step process. I'm going to have to go through, read the directions, watch some YouTube videos to figure pretty much everything out on what to do. I have watched a couple of videos already and I have leafed through the instructions, but not sure. Anyway, we got a slew of parts over here on the table. He did opt for the 3.5-inch lift, like I said, from Zone Offroad. And in that instance, you're going to have to put new upper control arms on to maintain factory geometry. From what I've saw in the past, most of the time these do not come with ball joints. Now they are coming with ball joints. And this is the Zone lift itself. It is a spacer lift. You do have to tear these struts out of the front and the rear and do some trimming on the studs and disassemble and reinstall some preload spacers. You got some new bump stops in there, front and rear. So there is quite a bit that goes into this. It's just not a plug and play operation here. The front are tapered, like I said, to help aid in maintaining the factory geometry. The back are just straight, and then they do, on the Badlands 4-door, they do get an extra 3/8 spacer on top of those as well. As far as the steps from rough country, I am actually really impressed on these steps. We do got just a small mark in the paint right there, but gonna have to bring that to his attention. Probably not going to be that big of a deal because that's going to be on the bottom mounting. You're not going to see it, and they're not going to rust because the steps and the sliders are aluminum. The only thing steel on this are the brackets themselves, which I thought was pretty nice. So they do have some slide pockets for hardware. You can see right there, and then it does come with end caps for both sides. So all in all, I'm really impressed with the rough country steps. The ones I've saw before, just like we put on the Jeep, those are not rough country. Those are, I think, Hook Off-Road or something like that. I can't remember for certain. They were steel construction, and I'm already starting to see just a little bit of rust on those. So all in all, I am very impressed with the rough country steps thus far. Hopefully they look pretty good on the Bronco once they get installed. Stand back, that way you can see kind of a stance, what it looks like before we lift it, and then after we lift it, we'll do the same thing. We'll step back to where we're standing now and get a look at the 3.5-inch lift. So I think I'm going to start, I don't know where I'm going to start. There's more that has to come apart on the front than there is on the back, so I may start on the back because it is just a little bit less work as far as getting those struts out of there. All right, before I go too much further, it does say in the directions as it's sitting, just to get a ballpark reference to measure from the fender to the center of the wheel. So that's what I did for all four sides. We're at 22.5 in the front and 23 in the rear. Just for some control of the rear axle, instead of putting my jack stands under their axle, I have them under the frame just in front of the lower control arms. That way I can move the axle up and down depending upon where I need it at a safe point to be able to remove the rear struts. There is a bolt on the bottom for those, and then there is probably, as soon as I pull this little push cap out of there, there's 3 bolts up in there that we'll have to remove as well. And then we can take this assembly out and this has to all be disassembled. So you will need a spring compressor to be able to do this lift. I just went ahead and removed the whole inner fender. It just allows easier access to the 3 top nuts on your strut assembly. To remove that, you just need a Phillips screwdriver, a 7mm, and a little trim tool. Get 13mm, remove the top nuts, and then the bottom's a 26mm.
Restricted, fixed upon the web. I need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely.
Alright, I got that rear strut removed. I do have everything apart. The only thing I have for a spring compressor are those 2 side things. I will tell you, these are kind of really a death trap. You'd never want to put your fingers in here as you're loosening those or tightening those. I have saw those spin together, and guys get their fingers crushed in them. So like I said, keep your fingers clear when you're loosening and tightening these spring compressors up. Strut compressors, whatever you want to call them. So with all this apart, had to read through the instructions as far as the new bump stop and a preload spacer. This will go on the shock body, and then your lower spring hat or your lower spring bucket will go on, and then your hat. Does say something in the instructions that you have to cut part of this stud off, 1 inch I believe is what it says. That way you can put those spacers on there, and this centering pin has to come off and be removed as well to be able to put those on there as well, because that will not fit anyway with that on there. So we'll take a pair of pliers, get that off of there. But first and foremost, I want to get this assembly put back together. First, we're going to put our preload spacer on there. This has a mark on there for the bucket. I'm going to transfer that mark to this preload spacer. That way I can line this bucket back up where it needs to be. I just did something a little bit different than what I said I was going to. I took a Sharpie and went up from the white line there that they had. Just extended it up. Now I can take the bucket and put it back on. Cover back on, and then we got a short spacer that goes on there. Put the washer on, and we are ready to go back in the spring. Before we do that, I'm going to go through there and cut these studs off. In the directions right here, it shows 1 inch from the base to the top. So I'll mark those at 1 inch and cut those off. Pull that roll pin out of there. You can see how that sticks up beyond that edge. That's why you need to cut those off. Alright, this side's all back together with the modifications needed. So now we need to put this spacer on. First we got to put some bolts in there. You can see the way that has a hex on the bottom of it to accept the head of the bolt. Alright, we got the rear spacer, got the longer bolts for those. You can see the front is different because they're tapered inside to out. I'm not certain which way they're going to go first. And then since this is a 4-door Badlands, there is another spacer that goes on top of here just like that. So we'll go ahead and put these on and reinstall the factory nuts. put those all on. We'll put our extra spacer on there. And this is ready to go back in the truck. Now we just got to do it all over again on the passenger side. So we'll go ahead and put this one in. We'll get the passenger side tore apart, and the back will be done. All right, back is all done and back together. Even I got the tires on and sitting back under its own weight. That raises up quite a bit. You can see the angle it's sitting there. So we're going to go ahead and turn our attention to tearing the front apart and getting it taken care of. So this is turning out to be quite an extensive job. You do, I was wrong, have to turn that just a little bit because you're changing your stud position when you put that spacer on there. So you do have to turn that top spring hat just a little bit. I think it's like 180 degrees, maybe just a little bit. So the studs that are in your spacer will line up with your factory holes on your frame. So you do have to turn that, just an FYI. Like I said, read your instructions because by no means am I a Bronco expert. But right now it's not looking too bad. So go ahead and get the front jacked up and start on it. Okay, we got the Bronco turned around. Gonna get ready and start on the front end of it. I am gonna work both at the same time, doing the upper control arms laying right there, plus doing the lift itself. So I don't think that I'm gonna have to take as much apart as what it says in the instructions. There is a lot that does have to come apart as far as your sway bar end link off the lower control arm to allow it to sag more. You're gonna wanna disconnect your steering arms. You are gonna take the ball joint loose from the upper control arm and allow this whole assembly to rock to the side. They do suggest loosening the spindle nut up or the CV shaft nut up as well and pushing that in just a little bit, just for allow for a little bit more access. But I think that's only if you're doing just the lift itself to be able to lift everything up and out. Since I'm gonna have the control arms off, I should have, I hope, enough access to be able to remove everything. Brake lines gonna have to be removed from your steering link. They say to loosen them up from the frame. So we're gonna see what we actually have to do and what we don't have to do to be able to get this strut assembly out of the truck. On the driver's side, it's just a little bit different as far as the upper control arm. You do have to, your steering shaft right there, you do have to take that loose and drop it down because this is one long nut that goes all the way through, or sorry, one long bolt that goes all the way through to a nut on the other side. So you do have to pull that bolt all the way out. So your steering shaft does have to be dropped down. So we're gonna go ahead and try and get started on this front end. Yeah. We'll see what happens. One other thing before I get started, if you look at the bottom of your ball joints, your steering joint, they have all these hexes on the bottom. What those are there for is to aid in helping you get these nuts broke loose if you're only using a wrench. What you do is you put, usually these are 10 millimeter, I believe. You put that on there and hold your shaft as you turn the nut off. So this is just to help you get these two pieces apart. If you're not using an impact, most of the time an impact, these are tapered and you can buzz these nuts off with no issues on both sides. But if it is broke free, you just hold this stem and then turn your nut off.
Fearless. Burning the bridge that keeps us. I'm here and I'm feeling fearless. Exaggerated, that's what you assume. A story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step.
Alright, I got everything apart. This is on the passenger side. This is an extremely time-consuming lift. Things aren't coming apart very easy. I couldn't get the wheel sensor out or speed sensor out, so I just undid everything to allow it to have maximum slack. The brake line, it stretches that quite a bit to be able to press this down to get everything out. Yeah, pain in the ass to say the least. But anyway, we have the strut sitting up here on the bench. It would be nice if these bolts would come out versus being pressed in there like a wheel stud. So we'll see how everything goes back in. I'm hoping I don't have any issues, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. All right, the front's just like the rear, with the exception of this top spacer is at an angle, and you want to make sure and keep that geometry correct. So, like it says in the instructions, this factory stud was here, so you just rotate the top hat itself 180 degrees while not rotating the isolator top or bottom. Just like before, I did put marks on everything so we can keep everything lined up. So hopefully we can wrestle this back in the truck or in his Bronco and get the passenger side finally buttoned up. Alrighty then, parts table is empty and it is the next day. That took a long time. The zone lift, the 3.5 inch zone lift, it looks good on the truck. With the steps and the lift, that's what he wanted, it's what he likes. I think that everything just looked good. It turned out well, even running the factory size tires. They're a 285, 75, 17 is what they're on there, so like a 33 equivalent. They don't look too bad on that 3.5 inch lift. I did receive a package late yesterday, so that's why I pulled his Bronco out to be able to have this package sitting inside, because I don't want it wet. And then I did run an errand this morning and went and picked up another little project. We got a 2020 Husky FC 250 sitting there. That one's gonna be mine. But here's a quick glimpse of that package right there. If you guys follow me on TikTok, you know what that is. I don't think I've disclosed anything on here of what that is behind me. So it's a big package. I can't wait to get it opened up. It did start raining on my way home, so we're gonna go out here in the rain and take a quick look at this Bronco, and then we're gonna shut this video down because I'm really kind of tired of seeing it. So there's the way she sits. I think it sits pretty good, really. We did measure, or I did measure from the fender down to the center of the axle, and it is 3.5 inches all the way around is what it gave it. But it did give it a pretty nice stance. Pretty happy with the way it looks, with the way it turned out. Like I said, even with the factory tires for right now, he can run 35s on there no problem. Might have some rubbing issues because of the back spacing on those wheels, so I would suggest swapping out the wheels, because these are don't have very much back spacing on them at all. Other than that, pretty fun project, but time consuming to say the least, and kind of challenging being able to get those struts in and out of there. Actually, the new struts went in easier than the old struts come out, as far as after I rebuilt them with the lift components in the factory strut position. So with that being said, I'm out of here. This one's a wrap. I'm done with this one. I'm gonna give him a call, let him know it's ready to be picked up. And with that being said, if you don't mind, hit that like button, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Hanging in the balance, not the life I want to live. I want to take it all, standing tall, fear I weighed the